Switched on IT is proudly brought to you by Oz Hosting, Cloud Made Easy.
Welcome to Switched on IT. I'm Barry. This is the show where we talk about everything IT. Today we are going to talk to you about how a business builds a logo. Your logo is a really crucial part of your branding. People tend to associate logos with a company. If you think, for example, if I were to say to you which company has a target as their logo, you would know immediately. You would know lots of the companies that have logos that stand out, and it's that particular part of their branding that sticks in people's minds and that they associate what the company does. Now, you will have noticed that the PTV Channel O logo is quite distinctive. It was designed for us by a company here in Toowoomba. And today, Doug and Ray are going to talk about several aspects of building logos, including things like what's the importance of your logo to a brand and how do you go about building it and looking at colours and several different things. Doug and Ray are with us now. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you today?
Hi there.
G'day, Barry.
G'day. Ray, what is the importance of a logo to a brand? Why would a company have a brand logo in any case? What is it that's so important about having a logo, and not just any logo, but a logo that defines the company?
Sure, it's about two components, really. It's about meaning and memory, right? And so most folks understand that we want to be able to know who we're doing business with. And when it comes to a firm and any kind of business, we need to be able to find and see meaning associated with that business. And really, by meaning, I mean differentiation. If everybody looked the same, then there would be no way to tell each other apart, other than through different mechanisms, talking to them and getting to know every person, and that would be very difficult for us all. So brands are a way for us to immediately determine meaning behind the business and to differentiate that business. And then, of course, for us to remember who they were and who they are. And so we are capable of differentiating and therefore remembering who people are through that kind of meaning and memorableness of a brand. Most brands have to be developed in the context of the brand itself, and so a logo is one component of the brand. And usually what we want to do is we want to think about the branding project of building a logo within the context of a branding project. And the logos usually and should be really in the latter parts of the development of the brand. I see so many people start to develop the logo as kind of the first component. We need a logo, so they go out there and they jump on that point. But if I could just really encourage everyone to spend more time on the substance and the meaning behind the company before you start creating the visuals, you're going to actually come up with a better brand altogether. So I really recommend it and encourage folks to think about what's your name, how is that going to make its way both in traditional marketing but also in digital today. It's not just about the cuteness of the name or the distinctiveness of the name, but can you search it? Is it available as a domain? All of those things are important components of the digital sphere today that are important to a brand. So you want to really get those pieces of the verbal brand in place. That is what's going to be written out, what are the words associated with the brand, tagline, and so on and so forth, and then develop the visuals after that. And then we can really talk about some of the components of a good logo. And to that, Doug, what are some of the components that we think about when we think about what makes a good logo? Like what do you feel like makes a logo look good when you see one?
Look, I think there's a couple of factors in there. It's got to be, I guess, in a way consistent with the brand's, personality. So, good logos that you think about do when you see just the logo, you're not seeing the company name. You're not seeing any tagline, but you're just seeing a logo. If you think about it from that standpoint, then the what the company stands for and how it's meant to make you feel, and if you think about their products, how their products are meant to make you feel, the logo should in some way be able to reflect that. So, some companies have very serious products, and other companies have products that you consume when you're having, fun and you're involved in leisurely activities. So I think that the business itself needs to understand what kind of feelings it wants to portray in its logo, and then potentially that becomes a guide to the shape and form and the colour that the logo is then going to take. So I think it's a matter of, in a sense, stepping back and unpacking and saying, what really is the customer experience that we're delivering, and now how can that potentially relate to the different design elements of a logo. So as I said, I think those design elements, there's color, shape, but there's other ways of looking at it as well. And then having come up with something like that, it's then, if you don't already have your brand name, it's obviously making sure that the brand name is going to be consistent with that, and that in itself may also guide you in terms of the sort of logo that you'd like to do. But of course, I'm not a designer, so in that sense, it's one of those things that I'm in awe of when people start coming up with designs for a logo. But from your perspective, what are the I've just mentioned one or two, but what are the sort of the elements that you see in terms of the actual, if we can call it the brand mark component of it versus the logo, the design element versus the brand name versus the tagline.
Yeah, and I think you bring up some really great points about brand really needs to determine whether or not it's a serious brand or a fun-loving, lifestyle type brand, and then from there start to think about what the visual elements are going to communicate, and that really does come into color. Many times we want to choose a color palette right out the gate, and while also not a designer, I did actually help to run a branding studio for many years, and just watching designers do their work is actually quite a fun and interesting space to be in. But in any discussion, we would look at to make sure that there was a color palette, and make sure that color palette allows us to be able to really work within the confines of the brand that we're trying to work with. But the things that I see a brand, when I'm just in awe of a brand, as you said, Doug, are simplicity. And what I mean by simplicity is not actually just being a single piece or part. It's that take that brand and shrink it down to the smallest size visible and set it across the room and look at it. And if you can still see the meaning of that logo at that size, just a little tiny sticker across the room, you've probably got a really good logo. And some of the best logos in the world, you can take them and put them on you could put them on the tip of a matchstick and set it away from your eye, look at it, and you would immediately be able to identify what that thing is. Barry started us off with the bullseye insignia from Target Corporation. Almost anyone on the planet who has a Target in their world knows that logo. People know the Microsoft logo. They know the Apple computer logo. They're capable of seeing that from a very far distance and identifying the values associated with that company because the marks are so distinctive. But what makes them distinctive is actually their simplicity. And you'll see that many of these logos of years past, like the Apple Ink logo, that used to be multicolored. Then it went into this like weird 3D coloring that they did, and now what is it? A plain, flat, single silver color. It's been reduced down to its element, and the best logos are those kinds of logos that are as simple as they can possibly be and communicate a value based on their color and the shapes that they're presenting. I also find that the best logos also actually have these hidden internal meanings. So for example, if you look at the FedEx logo, If you look at the FedEx logo, it actually is a word mark, meaning that it's just letters. But if you look in the center of the logo, there is an embedded arrow, and it's not a coincidence that that arrow exists in there. They're showing you that their tagline, in essence, and the whole spirit of the company of moving things forward, right? They want to show you that progress and that movement of items that they're shipping all day long, every day. So you have these brands that are capable of putting these almost subliminal but underlying messages built into the imagery. And when you see that kind of stuff, it's really quite phenomenal that there was a designer behind that, or a team of designers around building these kinds of really important pieces. But back to your primary question, Doug, you really need to think about typeface. How is the treatment of the text, and what does that treatment of the text communicate? Are you trying to go for something serious? Are you trying to make it look noble? Are you trying to make it look medical? Like if you have a particular profession where you want to make it look a particular way, you'll see things that try to look old. You'll see things that try to look very fanciful, very childlike. If you run a nursery, those kinds of things. So you decide on typeface based on what you're trying to do in terms of the brand's message and tone, and then deciding on the type of mark. Are you going to just have a word mark that is just words that represent the logo? Are you going to have words and an image associated with that? So a brand mark, some kind of insignia or symbol paired with the words like the name of the company. Or you're going to have an emblem or an emblematic logo, which is words on top of some kind of visual mark. And you have all kinds of options there, but you get to decide those. And really, a lot of that ends up being, how do you plan on using that logo? If you're just going to use it on a website and a couple of other pieces of collateral, well, you have a little bit more creative power. But if you're going to use it on a wide variety of things, like printing it on merchandise, like pencils and pens and notepads and those kinds of things, you need to think about the cost. For example, I worked with a designer who really didn't ever want to work with more than 2 colors on any logo. Why? Because once you went over those 2 colors, if you're using an offset printer and you went to the print shop, every one of those colors, additional beyond the 2 colors, was going to cost more money. And most business owners don't recognize that. And so then once they start getting up in the thousands and thousands of dollars just to print some business cards, they recognize, oh yeah, we want high quality business cards and we want to print them with a printer, but we can't afford to have 4, 5, 6, 7 colors in an offset print. And so then they decide to reduce the colors down, and then you have to backpedal on all of your brand decisions and so on and so forth. So just remember that if you're going to do any high-end level printing with an offset printer, you're going to need to be mindful of the costs associated with having many colors. Now today that seems to be somewhat of a lesser issue because we have lots of printers that are digital that are capable of doing lots of multicolor printing, but you're not going to get that super high quality offset printing feel without offset printers. So you just have to be mindful of that. So Doug, once we get to that point, I guess it's we should probably take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about how you actually go ahead and build a logo today. What are the platforms that are available to us to go ahead and build a logo?
If you've lost your income or had a change of earning capacity through no fault of your own and are struggling with debt that you can no longer handle, you probably feel a bit like this ant. If the struggle is getting you down and you feel overwhelmed, there is an answer. Central Liaison has helped thousands of people break free of the debt struggle by handling their debt for them. Freeze all interest, stop the harassing calls from the bank and start enjoying life again. Call them today on 0409 344 070 for a confidential, obligation-free chat about how Central Liaison can help you take your life back. The number again, 0409 344 070. Call them now.
Power FM is total entertainment. From the morning drive with Fiona and Jeff to the drive home with Jeff Black. On the weekends, catch the Crazy Kevin Show, Dennis Mitchell's Breakfast with the Beatles, the Semi-Pro Sports Show, and Racing Nation with James O'Shea, plus the music you grew up with. Keep your radio dial locked on Toowoomba's Power FM, celebrating 10 years. You'll find us at 88.0 on the FM dial or online at www.powerfmradio.com.au.
Oz Hosting is proud to support Switched On IT in bringing practical help to Australian businesses. We're talking to literally hundreds of businesses every day about their IT services, how to make them more efficient, how to make their businesses more efficient, and how to protect their valuable data. If you'd like your IT services securely hosted right here in Australia and expertly managed, talk to Oz Hosting.
When the going gets tough, advertising is a must. Thousands of potential customers make buying decisions every day based on advertising they've seen or heard on radio and television. Are you losing sales because potential customers don't know what you offer? Get your business, product or service in front of thousands of potential customers with a joint advertising package on Power FM and PTV Channel O. Capture a multimedia audience with our affordable radio, TV media advertising package. Stay ahead of the pack by contacting Barry on 0431 390 920 or email feedback@ptvchannelo.com or Jeff at powerfmtoowoomba@gmail.com.
Thanks, everybody, and welcome back to Switched on IT. And before the break, Doug and I were talking about the ability to develop a strong logo within the context of a brand. And what we're going to talk about now is the development of a logo in the software space. Before we go there, though, I do want to make one minor mention that in this whole discussion, very often the notion of a brand guide is lost in the shuffle. I think that every company should actually have a brand guide, and that doesn't mean that you have to have a designer put one together. You can find these online in many different, sort of templates, but you should really have a document that tells people how they should be using your brand. And it's kind of like a cover your butt kind of thing. You want to be able to have a way to tell people, like, for example, if you're going to run digital ads and you're going to hire someone to go ahead and run those, you want to be able to give some good instructions for how your brand should be shown on things so that they aren't shown poorly. And so often than not, I'm working with businesses and they want to do a marketing strategy and they decide to do some level of advertising, or they send their logos off to a designer to have some work done, and it comes back and it's not what they wanted. And most often than not, it's not what they wanted because they didn't tell the designer or the ad designers what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable for the way in which they were going to use the logo, or just their own preferences. And brand guides are the way in which you do that. You have to write that brand guide so that people know, you know what, I don't ever want to see my logo on orange. It's a gray logo, and when it gets shown on orange, it just looks bad. Preferences like that are really important, and it's a conversation that if you do hire a designer to have the logo developed, it should be had so that those things can be codified, and then you have it available to you that when you do go out and grow your business, as you grow and you hire people or you bring on consultants and contractors to do work, you have a guiding document that can say, this is what we want and how the brand should be used, and this is how we shouldn't. Especially in social media, man, I see some really poor social media done because people don't follow their own brand guidelines. They create the document, they put it in a drawer just like a business plan, and then they never look at it again. You can't do that. You have to abide by your own brand guide and make sure that you're sticking to the standards that you've created. So with that little bit of soapbox, Doug, let's talk about actually creating a logo. What tools exist out there today for creating a logo?
Well, anyone that's got my design skills will immediately go, the tools aren't between my ears. I've got to get some help to do that. Typically, what we've done, if we haven't had an in-house designer, which sometimes we have, we tend to use the outsourcing organisations, and we were talking before about organisations like 99 Designs, and there's the Freelancer, and there's multiple areas you can go. That's one of the starting points that I'd be considering. There's also the capability to use tools which will help you with your logo design as well. And I'm not familiar with those. I can understand that there can be, in a sense, an almost formulaic way of constructing a logo. But certainly our default setting at Oz Hosting has been to go to, freelancing, online freelancing resources. But they've been pretty successful for us in the past. I'd be interested though to understand what your experience with those is, and also if you have any direct experience with the more sort of online formulaic approach. Who it is, what the outcomes look like, and what you felt about it.
Yeah, I've been really lucky to be partnered with a branding studio for many years, and so a lot of our design work was done with very talented creative directors at our side, and having been in that space and steeped in that space of seeing really high-end design done, it's really fun to actually see technology taking over. It's also scary for designers because a lot more people are choosing automated technologies to make this stuff happen, and honestly, it's coming out really well. So we're seeing more and more technology take over that space for designers, and so I'm not sure where it's going to go, but it's certainly becoming a thing. But speaking in that space, there are high-end design professionals that you can hire that are services, all the way down to the technology and automated tools that are out there. So I'll walk us through kind of a movement in those things. So we can start off with Design Pickle. Design Pickle is a web-based agency where you pay them a monthly fee, and then they do all the design work for you. It's an unlimited amount of design work, and that's it. You pay them, and they go to work. You get a dedicated designer, unlimited requests, unlimited revisions, and they keep working for you. They just do all the work, and you keep piling it on. So they're not inexpensive, right? They charge you a pretty hefty monthly fee, but you can send them as much work as you want. And for some businesses that might have a lot of work to send them, it may make a lot of sense for you to do that. Then you come across the kind of low end of that market, platforms like Fiverr or Upwork, where you can spend little or a lot on services. You just have the option of being able to say, I want to spend $5 on a logo US, or you want to spend $500 or $10,000 on a logo. You can really do sky's the limit in some of these platforms just based on your requirements and the designers that you want to work with. I will note that almost on every platform that's a major website builder or a major website platform today, they all have logo builders. So if we talk about WordPress, WordPress has a partnership with a platform called Looka, Looka. Looka helps you develop a logo, very low cost, and gives you the opportunity to be able to use, again, a little bit of software. It starts asking you for your preferences regarding logo style, colors, and identifying some symbols that you might like, and then it generates based on that your kind of options of logos for your brand that it developed, and then you go ahead and can download those in high-res photos as vector files and all kinds of other color variations. And it even goes a step further where you can pay them a little bit more and they can produce a business card and a social media kit and some brand info. Remember that brand guide? It can give you kind of a brand guide light, and it's really quite useful. Then you go to Shopify. Shopify has its own platform that if you go to Shopify and then go, for some reason it's under the Learn section, but if you cover over Learn, go to Free Tools, you will see underneath the free tools a logo maker, and it's an option to go into there. I think they purchased this, and it's now part of Shopify, but it's a tool called Hatchful, and in essence, again, you plug in some information, and then Hatchful goes to town on behalf of Shopify and builds for you a logo. Wix has their own logo maker, and so Squarespace has its own logo maker. So all of the major website hosting builder type platforms all have their own logo makers, which goes to show how necessary it is in the ecosystem. Everybody's looking for a logo to be created, usually at low cost, and so that's available out there. And then the last two I'll talk about are kind of on either end of the spectrum. So on one side is a company called 99 Designs, and these are typically logo design contests. in which you pay a particular fee, and then you go through the process of having a bunch of designers submit logo options or logo designs, and then you go across those comps and you decide upon them as the winner of the logo contest, and then they refine it and finalize that logo for you. Then there is another tool which is on the complete other end of it and fully automated, and this one is called Tailor Brands. And so Tailor Brands, what it does is it uses machine learning, a little bit of artificial intelligence technology, where you put in some information, it analyzes the information you put in, but it's a little bit smarter, I think, than the other logo makers where you're putting in some information, and based on that information, it's showing you some pretty rough ideas and thoughts. Tailor Brands takes that kind of to a new level where they're able to use that machine learning technology, and as it builds your brand, it can do branded merchandise. It can do all kinds of other pieces of your brand over time, and it learns. It keeps learning. So you pay a fee every month or whatever it is, and it just keeps building it. It can build you a website. It can do just like a very vast array of brand elements, all built into the tool that starts off with you just designing the logo. And so we're seeing the market go in this direction where as you plug in more information, it gets to know your brand more. And as it gets to know your brand more, it's able to morph the brand, including the logo, into a better product for you. So it's a whole new world. It's very exciting to see logos developing in that capacity for us, and it taking data, because now we have all of this data about our business. Like we could take into account our clients and our products and services and kind of dump that data into a program, and it can in essence understand what the visual elements need to be for it. So that's kind of like the future today, now that we can actually look to see happening using the software. But you can go the simple old-fashioned route, so to speak, the traditional route, and hire someone who can sit down and work with you on a brand. It's certainly what we did when we developed our brand. But there are now all of these really fantastic pieces of technology out there that will help you do that. I don't recommend using any of these free tools just generally if you can afford it, just because ultimately there's a license behind using that logo, and many times if you're using these free platforms, who knows what they're giving you in terms of a license to be able to use the logo, and you don't want to get 3-4 years down, have a successful business, and then get a cease and desist letter from somebody who tells you that you are using their property, their assets that they developed on their website using their logo maker, and now you owe them X dollars, or you need to cease using the logo. So you really don't want to go down that road. So be very mindful of and careful of which type of logo maker you use, whether that be a person, a piece of technology, or a platform, so that you have the fundamental rights to that asset. Doug, any final thoughts before we close out?
Yeah, look, I think that's very interesting that potentially you could use a logo building platform that would build you a logo that you then don't necessarily have the legal rights to in the long run. That's something that's definitely a caveat for people considering that. I think one of the other things that we did sort of mention at the beginning, but we probably didn't explore that, and that is the importance of taglines. So I was going to say, should we just do it? And is that a good different thing to do, or what are your thoughts about how that was a bit tongue in cheek for you, Ray? But that's Nike, just do it, and that's good different, which is Aldi. But I think they're terrific examples of taglines that follow them around, and where they've got a little bit more space, they use them. So the tagline is a really useful tool. But are there any sort of tips and hints in terms of coming up with a distinctive tagline?
Yeah, so first and foremost, a tagline shouldn't be more than usually 12 words. I try to keep people down to under 8 when we're developing any new brand. A tagline is meant to explain to people what it is that you do. And so many times it's not only telling people what you do, but why you do it. And so it's kind of talking about the values of the organization. And when I say values, I mean the broader sense of values. So not moral and ethical values, but really the standards by which you run the company, why you do what you do. And so, for example, at W3 Consulting, many people don't realize when I say W3, it stands for World Wide Web. It's actually W to the power of 3, so it's W cubed, but we just call it W3 Consulting, and that might go over some people's heads. And so our tagline is helping small business on the web and beyond, and that helps us understand, helps us communicate to people what it is that we're really doing. We're helping people, helping small business specifically on the web and beyond. And that gives us a wide berth of areas and specialties to be able to work in, but it gives further hint at what it is the company provides. And so when your company name perhaps doesn't tell you exactly what it does, the tagline is there to be able to support it. The goal, of course, is to be able to have it be something that is pithy. Usually it starts with like helping, basically what we would consider a present participle, right? So is that a present infinitive? Forgive me. But the idea is that it would end in ing, right? And so you would be helping or providing or supporting. You want to give it a verb that is telling people what the company is doing. So you're going to start off with a verb that's infinitive, and you're going to give people what it is that you were doing for that community and how you're going to do it.
Very good. A very important part of the whole branding exercise. And in terms of providing legal protection for all these elements of the brand, so the logo that you come up with, the tagline that you use, the actual name that you use for the business, have you got any comments about that? Should people be running off and talking to their lawyers, or are there easier ways to make sure that you've got some kind of protection? Because I think one of the things is the last thing you want to do is to find out when you come to sell your business that the logos that you've invested in and the tagline that you've got is not legally protected.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really great point, and I believe that is usually a discussion for legal counsel in your particular state or jurisdiction, who's competent to be able to answer the questions there. One thing that I just tell every business owner to do is to just Google has an image search, and you can take a logo that's been designed for you and just upload it to Google, and it will then show you all similar designs of that particular image. And once in a while, I will come across a logo that is almost identical, if not identical, that a designer, said they developed, but really. And so, it's really important for business owners to not only do their due diligence just from working with good professionals who are designing for them and not just stealing other people's creative, property, but also once you do decide to finalize a logo. In the United States, we have the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and that covers copyright, trademarks, and service marks, and all of the various, laws, in that space. And you have TESS, which is the Trademark Electronic Search System. And you can search for things to make sure that you are not infringing upon someone's already existing, copyright or trademark or service mark or otherwise. And so you can do that. And then, of course, you can either do it yourself or hire an attorney to be able to file to protect those creative assets should you think that they are worth protecting. And especially if you think at some point you're going to sell the business, you would want to make sure that you protected that, for it to be worth anything and saleable in the future. Many times, especially logos are not defensible because they're just so generic that they're not really unique enough, and the trademark office won't actually give them protection. But again, I'm not competent to make those determinations. So you should probably seek legal counsel if you really have a question about that.
Yeah, and I think in Australia too, we've got IP Australia, which is the government body that where you register your logos and your brand names and taglines and those sorts of things, and the search tools there are pretty user friendly as well. So. I think before engaging lawyers, there's a reasonable amount of busy work that people could do to make sure that what they're proposing is able to be protected. And then once they're reasonably confident with that, then it would make sense to engage lawyers and make sure that you have got adequate protection for the properties that you've developed there. But I think Ray, we're probably at a conclusion there now, because we've gone from the beginning to the end. What are the major elements, the design elements of a trademark, and certainly how to go about getting your logos built, the different options that we've got there, and finally how we go about protecting them. So I've got nothing further to add. I'll hand it back to both you and Barry if there's any further comments.
Terrific. Now, just one thing that, as you were talking, that I thought about was that somebody at some stage said to me, this was a designer, it was actually the person that designed the logo for PTV Channel O, told me that when you're designing a logo, you need to see what it looks like in black and white, because if your logo disappears or looks terrible in black and white, then you're probably not choosing the kinds of colours and the combinations of colours that are going to work well.
Yeah, I would actually recommend to look at it in full color, in just basically primary colors only. Look at it in grayscale, and then look at it in black and white. And you would be surprised at how many times I've seen a logo go from its full color version to the black and white version, and then all of a sudden you're horrified by what the image looks like. So you bring up a great point, which is that you should definitely look at it. And again, I use the, take that logo and set it across the room 20 feet away, and then look at it and see if it looks the way you think it should. Some of the other finer points is making sure that you run it across multiple cultural databases, so that you make sure that the logo, maybe doesn't mean anything inappropriate in your country, in Australia, but then you take it to another country and it might mean something very inappropriate or taboo. And if you have clients and plan to do work in that country, then you need to make sure that your logo doesn't look that way. If you don't plan on doing work in that country and you don't care, then that's fine. But you should probably do some level of due diligence on those components. Same thing with words. When you start to do that word salad, and people take a business name, they kind of crunch one word with another word to create a portmanteau. You then create these new words, but many times they're not new words. They're words that are potentially in another language that will not mean what you want it to mean. And so you should definitely run against foreign dictionaries just to make sure. Just a quick Google search will typically show a word, to make sure that you're not doing something kind of foolish out the gate. So, not just from a legal protection perspective, but also just from a common sense, cultural awareness perspective. Same thing with taglines. Many times taglines can go awry when you use a cultural reference that may make sense in English, but does not make any sense once it's translated into another language. So be mindful of that. Also, if English is your second language, that can also kind of bite you, because you may not get a particular phrase, and you might decide on the tagline. Run it across a native speaker so that your tagline is not going to run you into any trouble. With someone who may think of it as a double entendre or something like that, that could be misused against you. You don't want your brand to be used against you, is really the point. You want your brand to put your best representation forward. And many times these are just little, kind of hiccups along the road to developing a good brand.
Yeah. Okay. Doug, any final words?
No, I think that's a terrific wrap-up. Thanks, Barry.
Okay. Doug Endersby and Ray Sidney Smith, thank you for your input today, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Ray.
You have been watching Switched on IT with Doug Endersby and Ray Sidney Smith, our two experts. We've been talking today about branding and in particular logos in your branding. Now, if you have any questions or anything that you would like to ask Ray or Doug, or any suggestions about the show or other input information that you want to give us about logos, you can contact us on our email address. It's feedback@ptvchannelo.com. Don't forget that you can also connect with us on our social media platforms, and we're on Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and YouTube and on Instagram. There are all of the places where you can contact us on the screen now. Don't forget that we will be back again next week with another edition of Switched on IT. And if you missed any of the episodes, they are all available on our video on demand. Just go down the left-hand side of this site and find Switched on IT. You'll be able to see everything there that we have done in the past. So we will leave this session now. We will see you again next week.
When the going gets tough, advertising is a must. Thousands of potential customers make buying decisions every day based on advertising they've seen or heard on radio and television. Are you losing sales because potential customers don't know what you offer? Get your business, product or service in front of thousands of potential customers with a joint advertising package on Power FM and PTV Channel O. Capture a multimedia audience with our affordable radio, TV media advertising package. Stay ahead of the pack by contacting Barry on 0431 390 920 or email feedback@ptvchannelo.com or Jeff@powerfmtoowoomba@gmail.com.